And joining us as well as a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening to businessman and former head of the Tobago Chamber, Mr. Demi John Cruickshank. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Good night, sir. Good night, and good night to all the listeners and viewers of the Observer tonight.
You know, every time I tell people you are coming on, the first thing they say is, that is the next chief secretary of the THC. I say, boy, I don't want to get into that because if I only mention that to Mr. Cruickshank, he says, boy, I don't want to get. But it's always a pleasure to have you on.
I good in the position I am. How are you?
Always good to hear your voice. You know, as far as the murders in Tobago, I mean, the current spate of murders is a result of conflict amongst criminal gangs who have extended their activity and criminal gang activity in Trinidad following in Tobago. And this is according to the National Security Minister, Fitzgerald Hine. Now, I'm telling you straight up, I can't buy into that. Because when you talk about a tourist destination, and if you're selling a product that is centered around tourism, this to me is certainly not based on logic.
Gang related.
Yeah, I can't. Please go ahead, expand on it. I can't buy into it. I can't accept that.
Well, you have to look at the two last murders we had, right? The two young ladies. One car was used for basically gang violence, basically, which is a fact. You have some sort of the 6 and the 7 culture that is now breeding in Tobago. But you also have a situation where people, and the reason, and I got away bitterly with somebody in law enforcement because I told them crime is a direct link to unemployment and people catching their tail. If a man making money, he have no time to go and say joining 6 and 7 and all these foolishness. So you have to look at the state of the economy, where the economy is at, and why people would want to go into a gang, why I would be so foolish to join something 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever this thing's supposed to be. So you have to look at this thing holistically, and you can't just broad wash this whole thing and say it's because gangs expanding from Trinidad. You always had gangs in Trinidad from the 70s come right down to now. But Tobago was protected. You have to ask yourself, what is happening now that having people now even thinking about joining a gang or even going and do this criminal? This is 8 murders for the year in Tobago. This is unheard of. This is craziness. Our murder toll for the entire year, it normally is around 10. You in me?
Yes.
You're not even half of the year as yet. And we already have. So if the projection is you're not even half of the year and you're at 8 murders, what you're telling me Tobago could end up with 18 to 19 murders in this year?
Yeah, and not only that, I was speaking to political scientist Dr. Indira Ramprasad there, and as far as legislation, there's always been all kinds of legislation we've seen for the past years. But criminals know that that doesn't work. Legislation doesn't work unless you get there and arrest the situation. And Tobago should be handled differently. You need to send a strong message that when you do things on an island that is centered around tourism, there will be zero tolerance. In other words, don't come here with your nonsense. And that's the kind of language I would have expected to hear from the Chief Secretary to the Minister of National Security. You see all them guns and all them things? You see here? Not here. Don't bring that here.
And a hard approach has to be taken in Tobago. Because let me tell you, you can't have people like me leaving my business in the chamber, we the chamber joining with the THA, going all over the world trying to promote Tobago, and then you have some little imps coming to shoot up the place. Suppose if this person see one of his gang, according to the minister, gang opponents in Store B, and decide to open fire in Store B, and you have tourist hunting. You know what that happens to our tourism product in Tobago? So the police have to take a no-nonsense approach, a hard approach, as to how they deal with crime in Tobago. And you're correct. You have to treat criminalities and crime totally different to what you're treating Trinidad. A criminal must know Tobago is untouched. Don't come to Tobago and do your foolishness, because the consequences will be 10 times severe as Trinidad. And that is if you don't send that kind of message to whoever is coming over to Tobago to do foolishness. People will feel, well, right, I could go to Tobago, I could do whatever I want, and nobody will touch me. And you have to send a serious message to these criminals that crime is not tolerated at all in Tobago. At all.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Cruickshank. Throughout the years, I mean, you the head of the chamber, former head chamber, has it always been challenging, based on your personal experience, to get that message across that when you're dealing with a product like tourism, people need to not only feel a sense of security, but they must feel welcome. And when I say welcome, everything from customer service, from the time they land to their departure, it must be about, listen, I am going to tell people, here is where I'm going to come. If I decide to retire, if I decide to have a wedding, do you find it challenging to get that message across of the importance of what it is that Tobago has?
Well, we just had a meeting, to be fair, with the present commissioner of police about a month ago, and my colleagues did indicate it to her that we have to deal with crime differently in Tobago, because Tobago is a special place. Our economy and our GDP depends heavily on tourism, and we cannot be seen as a destination that is run away with crime, because 8 murders for the year in May is absolutely ridiculous and out of the question. So we have to deal with it, nip it in the bud immediately, and let people know that when you come to Tobago, you're coming to enjoy yourself, and you are not welcome with any criminality in this island. So that is what you have to do. That is, if you don't send that serious message, when you have a murder, you lock down the whole of Tobago. We don't care who is inconvenienced, we don't care who reach work late for work, but you have to let the criminal know that, listen, Tobago is off bounds, and we are not tolerating that on the island in Tobago. And that, if you don't send that message, and send that message very early, people will feel that they can do anything and get away with it. No. And I'm saying 8 murders in the month of May from January 1st is ridiculous, and it is too high, and it's unacceptable.
The Chief Secretary has stepped down as Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy. Looking at the reshuffle, what's your take on it?
Well, he's still the Secretary for Finance and Economy until I think it's July 1st, he indicated.
Right.
He has to present his budget to us in Tobago and to the wider public, and especially the business community. We do not know what that is as yet, but I will tell you, the reshuffling of the executive, because you did not really reshuffle the executive council members, you really actually had some reshuffling of the assistant secretaries. And at the motion of Pastor Baines, the Secretary for Community Development and Culture, and the elevation of Joel Sampson. It is no secret that Pastor Baines has been demoted, because that division has been underperforming badly from the inception of this assembly. And those type of divisions are flagship divisions that people go for social programs, and the community base and the community is well intact in Tobago because of community development. So it wasn't any big surprise that Pastor Baines was removed from community development. But what it has to say now is that the entire executive council have to work extremely hard for the next year and a half that they're in office to make sure and get the economy back up and running, because the reality is that the economy is extremely in a sad state, and it is no rocket science to bring back the economy in Tobago quickly. If you sit and we go to the meetings and you don't implement what we have decided, then people saying that you're going to waste your time. So what I'm calling on the THA is to let us see how you can fast track. And fast tracking the economy is simple: construction. Get people back out working. Get all the subcontractors, the small contractors working in the communities, and you will see how the economy will rebound in a very, very short space of time. And that, you don't have to have a PhD to understand that. That is simple rocket science.
And I hope that the focus is also on those bottlenecks when it comes to payment. I think at the end of the day, reshuffle or not, there has to be some strategic plan to deal with better delivery.
Well, the situation is there is a movement of new administrators in the Tobago House of Assembly. And they are young administrators, vibrant administrators. Some of the administrators literally was in the private sector. They just went into the public service because of the new law that the private sector people could have applied to become administrators within the space. So we've seen administrators coming in the space that is it from the private sector. And I'm hoping that this bunch of young people now understand that payment cannot cross 60 days when you take goods from a supplier, right? Yeah. You have to pay people because at the end of the day, cash flow is the life of any business. And you cannot wait for 2.5 years to pay a bill because most of those companies will go into foreclosure and close down. So I'm hoping the best with the reshuffle, but we're going to keep the Chief Secretary and his team on their toes this wrongs because there's no excuse. You can't say that you're waiting, you're in the teething stages. All the assembly members is now experienced in public administration, and they have to deliver within the next year and a half.
I agree with you, Mr. Cruickshank. I want to thank you so much for taking time out. I hope that things work out better. And yes, we will keep them under the spotlight because delivery should be the priority. All the best to you. We'll be touching base periodically and updating people on what's happening, and keep the things going as best as possible.
All right, thanks to you and thanks to the viewers at the Observer.
Thank you,
and
sir.
have a blessed night.
Same to you, my friend.